Is liberty dying where you live? Escape to Keene at freekeene.com.
All right. So I'm going to give you a quick intro here for our final speaker, Rich Paul. He has heroically, as you may know, or maybe you don't if you haven't been paying attention, he was charged over a year ago with selling cannabis, multiple counts of that, also selling purported LSD, totally consensual acts involving adults consenting, and he spent a year of his life in jail over this. He stood up to the charges rather than take a plea deal, which was offered immediately before trial. He was offered a 0-day in jail plea deal on this thing, and he turned that down in the hopes of going with jury nullification on this and taking it to trial. He was facing 100 years in prison for these various different charges. This is a pretty serious thing. Made national headlines. Vice.com covered the case, as well as other places. The story didn't break as big as it should have, honestly, but he stood on principle anyway. It wasn't about getting the publicity. It was about doing what he thought was right. That's my interpretation of it. I've always been a big fan, and he's a hero of mine for doing that. So I'm honored, Rich, that you would come and speak, especially since it would have been much more difficult to have you here last year, considering you were in a cage at that time. So it's great to have Rich at Keenevention physically. Had you continued to be in a cage, we would have done our best to do some sort of a video conference here, but it's obviously better to have you here in the flesh. So Rich Paul, welcome to Keenevention, and thank you, brother.
Thanks, Ian. Wow, there's been a lot of talk about Keene activism, Keene-style activism recently. And, I think that we've done a lot of very good work in Keene, New Hampshire for liberty. And I'm sorry, I was supposed to open with a joke. Okay, so here it goes. A anarchist walks into a bar with a parrot on his head. Bartender says, "Where the hell did you get that mangy thing?" Parrot says, "New Hampshire, there's thousands of them." Okay, that was worth a try. Anyway, there's been a lot of work about whether a lot of talk about whether Keene-style activism is effective. And I think we've done a lot of good work in Keene, New Hampshire. And we've made some mistakes as well. And one of these is when somebody comes up to us in Keene, New Hampshire with a negative attitude, we pull out a camera and film that person, because we don't necessarily know what they're going to do, and we want a video record for our own protection. And once we have the video, we generally put it on the internet. When people come up and say friendly things to me, I almost never pull out a camera and start recording them, because that would really irritate most of the people I know. So the bottom line is the videos of my positive interactions, of which there are thousands for every negative interaction I have in Keene, never go on the internet. And people think as a result of that we have all these negative interactions with locals in Keene, New Hampshire, and that's really not the truth. When I walk down the street in Keene, New Hampshire, and a lot of people know who I am because of the 420 rally, and I have people coming up to me still and saying, "Yeah, hey, how you doing? I was at the rally 5 years ago, and that was great." And, a lot of these people are very friendly to the idea of, or the ideas of liberty, and that's a lot of what I was going for. That was one of the audiences of the 420 rally, was the locals. And we made some progress there. Now, we also irritated some locals, and that's definitely true. Some of them we irritated just by being effective. Because, if nobody knows who you are, they're not going to be irritated by your activism. They're going to say, okay, it's just another crank out there. But when people start talking about your ideas, when your activism becomes water cooler discussion, okay? And people start seriously saying, well, yeah, why is weed illegal anyway? You know? That upsets the statists. It scares the hell out of them. And yes, they're going to turn around and get angry that we did that activism and we got our message out. I'm not going to apologize to anybody for that. Another audience of the activism that we do in Keene, New Hampshire is libertarians elsewhere in the country. And we have made a lot of national news from Keene, New Hampshire, and that's very important because people who don't know about the Free State Project aren't going to move to New Hampshire to be part of it, you know? And every time we get on the Colbert Report, every time we get in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, even if the story is not positive, I know that if I was out there as a libertarian and I was reading things like the Wall Street Journal hit piece, I would be reading between the lines of this and saying, hey, that's exactly the stuff people say about me. You know, maybe I should check these people out, you know? And I think that the outreach to other libertarians outside in the failed 49 states outweighs any damage that we might do radicalizing or angering locals. So, you know, if you're thinking that we're sitting here in Keene, we're just doing whatever comes to mind without thinking about it, that's not the case. We may have just come to different conclusions than some people in the other parts of the state. But, you know, I have had a lot of people come up to me and tell me I'm part of the reason, or you're part of the reason that I moved to New Hampshire. And that is, you know, that's a wonderful feeling for me. And a lot of those people moved to Manchester or Grafton or Ware, you know, who knows? But see, I should have a werewolf joke for that. Next year. I don't know. The other thing that I would like to see, the thing that I would like to see change in the liberty community is there seems to be a feeling among people frequently that if I disagree with your politics, I can't be your friend. Or if I disagree with your tactics, I can't be your friend. And that's not necessary. I mean, I want to talk to people who disagree with me. If I never talked to people who disagreed with me, I'd never change my mind, you know? And I was a minarchist when I moved to New Hampshire, you know? Okay, the first one didn't work too well. How's this? What's the difference between a minarchist and an anarchist? 6 months in New Hampshire. But seriously, there are people who are minarchists who move here for the Free State Project, and you know they just want to help me chipping away at the first 95% of government. Fine, grab a pickaxe, you know. And you know, if you want to stop working when there's 5% left, well, you're going to be due for a break by then, buddy. You know. You're going to be used up, so don't worry about it. Because, you know, we've got a long fight ahead of us, you know. Statism is entrenched in our culture to the point where there are people who think that if the government doesn't do particular things, those things just won't happen. You know, who will build the roads? Well, Shem will build the roads, actually. Shem Kellogg, he builds them now, you know. He'll just be paid by a different guy, you know, and he won't be paid with stolen money. But, you know, so I really love all the different flavors of activism and all the different flavors of political opinion that you run into in New Hampshire. That's the thing that I think is a plus of the movement, not a minus. It would be so boring if everybody at this convention had agreed with me on all the subjects. It would have been like, well, screw this, let's go home. We got nothing left to talk about, you know? And you have to be able to debate people with whom you vehemently disagree with respect, because there's no, if there's no respect in the communication, there is no communication. And that means that I have to be able to debate a hardcore statist without calling him names, without resorting to the ad hominem, without turning it into a personal issue. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of work and a lot of diplomacy. And diplomacy is sometimes a little bit lacking in our movement, but it's something that we need to learn. I'm going to open it up to questions in a couple more minutes. I guess the only other thing that I wanted to say is the biggest thing that we need in Keene, New Hampshire right now is more entrepreneurship going on. We need to see agorist businesses moving to Keene. We need to have people who are moving to Keene not necessarily to get themselves arrested, but to run a business, just to live there. And if you want to be supporting caste in activism, that's great, but not. People seem to have this image that if you move to Keene, you got to get arrested, and it's like, oh, no, not really. There's a lot of Keeniacs that haven't been arrested and have no desire to be. Anyway, I've really had a good time at this convention. I appreciate y'all showing up, and this is kind of the reward part of the reward for some of the activism that I do during the year. Is I show up here and I relax and I chill out with you people, and I usually don't have to buy my own drinks, and that rocks. Anybody who wants to contribute to that is always welcome. So anyway, I've had a great time at this convention, and I've had a great time in Keene. I've been through some hard things. I've done a year and a half in jail out of the 5 or 6 years that I've been in Keene, but I wouldn't trade the experiences that I've had here for anything. I used to earn 6 figures as a computer consultant, and I produced some really good work. But the thing that I'm really proud of, the thing that makes me go, wow, is when I look at the old videotapes of the original 420 rallies, and I see 100 kids on the Keene Town Square chanting, "Freedom, freedom," as they're loading me into a police car. And that I'm proud of, more than anything I ever did professionally. So anyway, let's see if anybody has any questions for me. Thank you.
I'd be curious if you'd be willing to comment on the various individuals that were blackmailing you, the origins of all of your recent problems, because I'm not sure everyone here knows the entire story. They just know that you ended up in jail over cannabis, but it's really much more interesting than that at the very beginning.
So you want to hear the story of the Rich Paul massacre in 4-part harmony?
I already know what the story is, but I'm not sure everyone here knows what happened the first day that all of this went down.
Okay. Well, that sounds fun. That was a hell of a day. Well, I went down to the drugstore to sell a quarter pound of weed, and CVS parking lot, and I encountered a couple of Keene police detectives who were there to arrest me, and as soon as I saw them, I knew it was like, okay, this is a sting. I have been gotten. So they dragged me into the When my girlfriend at the time was with me, and she did exactly the right thing, which is to step aside and not say anything to the officers and to make a Porcupine 411 call. And let me plug Porcupine 411. It's a great system. It allows you to deliver messages to a large part of the activist community up here. She made a Porc 411 call and let it be known that I was being arrested. And this becomes important later in the day. And so I was arrested. I was brought down to the Keene Police Department, and I walked in and found a stout, obviously ex-military individual, or he certainly looked ex-military to me, named Phil Christiana. And he said, "Hi, I'm Phil Christiana. I'm a special agent of the FBI. And I'm here to talk to you about selling weed." And my first words to him were, "No shit." Because you see, the FBI doesn't normally investigate $400 marijuana transactions in small New Hampshire towns. And the reason I was talking to Phil Christiana is because he had basically set me up in hopes of getting me to put on a wire and go back into the Keene Activist Center, not to spy on the people from whom I got my drugs. They didn't care. They didn't ask me any questions about drugs. They wanted to know what y'all were up to in Keene, New Hampshire at the Keene Activist Center. And they also indicated that they would want me to do things like get people to sell me things so that they could be arrested and further entrapped and could be entrapped and forced to do the same thing. So they're trying to create basically a cancer within the movement of people who had basically been turned. And this is somewhat of a testament. I mean, they wouldn't have been doing this if nobody had ever heard of us. So yes, again, Keene, New Hampshire activism does make some enemies, and the FBI has been among them. And I write that up to effectiveness. But he brought me in, and I was considering a number of different strategies. My first thought was, okay, I'll put on this wire, walk into the KAC, lift up my shirt and go, "Guys, you'll never believe what happened to me today." I got caught and released like a salmon. But, and that was originally what I was going to do. But then they started asking me questions, and the first question they asked me is, "Where do you live?" And the answer was, "At the Keene Activist Center." And I was afraid that if I answered that question, that would be enough for them to get a search warrant and get inside that way. So I just stopped answering questions at that point, said I'm going to have to talk to a lawyer before I say anything to you guys. And that's the thing. If somebody's asking you to do that kind of thing, my advice would be, don't say directly no to them. Say, "I have to talk to my lawyer before I discuss this with you." And get your lawyer in there as early as possible, even if it's a public defender, because you don't want to talk to these people directly. They are duplicitous, and they're good at it, and they've been lying to people for a long time. And I actually got into that conversation with the FBI agent. He said, at one point he said, "Well, I can't lie to you." And I said, "Well, actually, the Supreme Court has found repeatedly that, yes, you can lie to me, and it won't affect the case." And he said, "Well, if I perjured myself, I'd be fired." And I said, "Well, if you perjured yourself, you'd be in court. You're not under oath. You can't possibly perjure yourself here." So, but these guys are good at being duplicitous. So lawyering up fast is a very good plan. But anyway, that's pretty much where we left it when they kicked me out. Is they said, "Okay, well, you go talk to a lawyer and get back to us." And it was a very strange release. They brought me to the front door of the police station, which they never do. And instead of insisting that we wait for my ride, which is what they ordinarily do, they basically threw me out the front door and said, "Just start walking." And I'm thinking, holy shit, this asshole's going to shoot me in the back. They don't do it this way, but that's how they chose to do it. So the long and short of it is, I got back to the KAC, and I was planning on talking just to Ian about it. And Pete and Ademo ended up being there, and I ended up sharing it with them as well. And we made a video immediately announcing, what I'd been asked to do and such. And so that's more or less the story of the Rich Paul massacre in 4-part harmony. And anybody else?
I was wondering if you feel that your agorism is in itself activism?
Well, to answer that, I'll look at the definition of agorism. Counter-economic activity is any gray market or black market activity outside of the regulatory state. Agorism is counter-economic activity carried on for a political purpose. So that, to me, that second part of the definition answers that. You're doing it for a political purpose, or at least for a partially political purpose, and I definitely consider it activism. Anybody else? Well, all right. Thank you all for listening to me, and thanks for having a great convention. And thanks, Ian, for putting this on. You did a hell of a job. Is it 420? Does anybody have a bowl?
What's jail food like?
Jail food sucks. I'm not fond of it, but it is 420, so just in hopes that somebody's going to go out and smoke a bowl after this, why don't I do the opening words that I used to do to start the 420 rally. We smoke these in remembrance of lost liberties, and in hope for a day when the people won't fear the government, because the government fears the people. Smoke them if you got them.
We'd like to invite you to visit freekeene.com. FreeKeene.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. FreeKeene.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. FreeKeene.com.
I should be in Keene, New Hampshire with the Free Staters.